Hi, it's Voss Graham again. I'm here at the TTI Con 2019, and I'm still hanging out with all these smart people and all these brilliant thought masters and people who have successful businesses. We've got some corporate people in town. It's a big success. There's over 500 people here for the conferences, and the speakers have just been outstanding so far today. And I'm really honored today to have an opportunity to interview Ron Bonnstetter, who is the Senior Vice President of Research for TTI SI. And he created our brain research division for our assessments, and is responsible for a lot of the research that we do to make sure that when we offer you an assessment, you're getting accurate data. And I'm a big believer in this accuracy, and I've seen it with my clients. They tell me these are the most accurate reports that they've ever seen, read, and coupled with a debrief, we get 100% response that this was the most valuable use of their time when I do the debrief on top of the report.
Thank you.
And the reports are just awesome. But we got this little gizmo here, and I'm going to have him talk about this little thing. But Ron, tell me a little bit about how the Brain Research Division impacts the assessments that we offer. You know, I'm a big assessment guy. I love the assessments, particularly the Trimetrics HD with the 4 different sciences. And I just love to hear what you do, because you got you and a bunch of other PhDs housed over in the bunkhouse, and
we have some powerful people that are doing some good thinking. So it's sort of fun.
That's
well,
cool.
you know, when you think about this, I think the first thing that comes to mind with somebody that's not in our field is that these are self-reports. So you're asking somebody to fill out an assessment and give you answers, and then you're going to put validity and assume that has any accuracy at all.
Right.
And so that has to be addressed.
Yes, it has.
And we've got to figure out how to do that. So when you think about it, the cognitive neurology component of this is exciting, because I'm able to actually look at a person when they're making a decision. I'm able to expose how that decision is made, and I'm actually able to see in the brain whether there is a rejection or an acceptance and an intensity on every answer. And that's exciting to be able to break it down that way. So what we're finding is that we're able to see if, from the brain research, it's corresponding to the answers they put on the actual assessment. Now, this is not done for everyone. This is not something that's going to replace taking the assessments. We're doing it to refine our questions, because some of these correlate with the brain better than others. Why? Then we cross-reference this, where triangulation is called, because Dr. Garrick then is running all the statistical analysis on our items.
I've seen some of the stat reports, and they're amazing.
So recently,
data up to here.
He and I were looking at this data, and I was showing him the results of a whole set of brain data on an item. I said, this particular item, look at the correspondence we're getting. Everybody is basically brain dead on this item. And he says, well, I've looked at the stats on that, and this has low discrimination. So this is not something that's giving us good information. So we're able to identify items that we want to modify and make it better. And it's not diminishing the quality of the assessment. Actually, it's enhancing.
Yeah, I was going to say, since you activated the Brain Research Division and you started making some changes, I've seen the difference in the reports and the dialogue and the content that's delivered. It's extremely accurate.
Well,
my clients love it. My clients love these reports.
And we're into continual improvement, so it's not one and done. You know, TTI did not just pick up an assessment in 1950 and then market it and make it prettier. No, we really work diligently to recognize that that people change and that our assessments need to mature, and language changes, because the assessment is nothing more than capturing language, and so we have to constantly be monitoring the questions that are being used and see if the context of those questions are altered.
Is some of this due to the generational shifts, the millennials, the Zs, and along with the boomers? I mean, it seems like they have different ways of thinking about the same topic. That doesn't mean they're right or wrong, it just means they're different.
Yeah.
And you have to make sense out of that from this
You
this
do,
research.
and I think that's a hypothesis that's right now it's a hot topic, or how do we deal with millennials? And recently I attended a conference at one of our competitors.
Really?
And one of our competitors actually has been pulling together the research arms, and 35 of our competitors, including us, were in attendance for a 3-day conference on just research. And so I mentioned this because this was a hot topic, millennials.
Yeah.
I'll tell you the takeaway. First of all, none of the 35 companies, the research arm, were able to find anything that was statistically different in their assessments, and they're across the board, all kinds of different assessments.
Right.
But they were not able to find any assessment that differentiated millennials based on the kinds of data they were collecting. We have 5 sciences, and our preliminary data right now from demographics would indicate we're not seeing statistical differences in the dimensions and the domains that we collect.
Wow.
Now, that doesn't mean that millennials are not different. One gentleman summarized it, and he says, I think people fail to recognize that millennials are younger.
Yeah.
And I said, well, what do you mean by that? It's pretty straightforward. It's a high level comment.
It's a simplistic approach for sure.
He said, look around the room. He said, none of us are millennials. I don't think we know what it's like to be young anymore. And he said, so I think, he said, we need to recognize that being young in a business is different from our perception now because we're no longer young. And I think that's something we forget sometimes.
Don't mention that too many times. I'm trying to ignore that factor for myself. You know, my inner child locked up my mature adult about 5 decades ago and lost the key.
That doesn't mean millennials aren't different, but also recognize that at least on the instruments that we use, they are not showing at the present time statistical difference. Well, it is good because it means that we don't have to differentiate in terms of age with regard to some of our hiring practices and things of that nature. It is good.
Is there any difference between male and female, out of curiosity?
Again, not statistically different.
Cool.
But there are minor differences that do show up in our database, and recognize when I say the population, when I use the word population, it's the population that take our assessments. So it is not the population of the United States. We don't know. We can't generalize that.
Of course, we've run about what 30 million assessments
reports
now.
Yeah.
That's so that's given us some pretty good data.
Well, we've got a good indicator.
Yeah, good. I would say that's a very strong indicator. 30 million. You have as they say in statistics, you have a competent N factor.
Well, I would call it robust.
Yeah, robust.
Robust. But we have, I just recall a conversation with the research team recently where we're seeing a slight decrease in the number of primary Ds that are coming out of the business world primarily, which is where we work. So that shouldn't surprise you in a way that we're seeing more males with a higher D or more principal Ds than we are principal Ds from females in our database at the present time. I think that again is something we monitor, which is exciting in our research because we constantly monitor this stuff. So we're constantly looking at what are the norms. Are those norms changing? Are they different by country?
Good. I appreciate you bringing up norms because I've always noticed that it seems like we change our norms every 3 years. Is that based on research and making sure that we're staying up to date?
Absolutely. There are minor movements that occur, and there are cultural movements that occur. And so one of our primary assessments is in over 40 languages.
That's
and so
correct.
We do not use, when we get a large enough N from a country, we renorm that country so that it's unique to them. And I can tell you right now that even behaviors, as an example, our behavioral assessment, there are differences around the world in terms of a population and how, and as a result, we norm that differently.
Yeah.
So that we can really identify the uniqueness of that population.
I'm curious. I wonder why so many people are tuned into DISC all the time. They ask about DISC profiles, but they really need more because the DISC by itself, well, it's great for communication in teams and that sort of thing, but even more so, you add some other factors, you get a higher predictability rate. Is that correct?
You really do. And now these are not generalizable to all scenarios, but I'll give you a couple of examples.
Oh, that's great.
In other words, as
Thank
a
you.
researcher, we always put in.
Yeah. Except it's sort of like an economist. On the other hand, we.
Right. And in our world, we start every sentence with "it depends."
It depends.
So it depends what
I
population
resemble
you're
that
talking
remark.
about. But when it comes to looking at, for example, we took a group of people who were self-proclaimed or they were nominated that they were entrepreneurs. And there was some criterion for that. They had to have started more than one business, up to 3 different businesses in 2 different fields. There were some things of that nature that really differentiated them as entrepreneurs. But as a result of that, we were able to take that group of unique people and then compare them to the general population of our assessments to see if we could come up with a model that would differentiate the 2 groups.
Right.
And you mentioned using behaviors. When we use behaviors only, we were able to, with about, off the top of my head, about 64% of the time I could be accurate.
That's the number I've heard, 62 or 64.
Yeah, and that's better than chance.
Absolutely. So it's better than 50-50.
Well,
too.
if we would go up the road to Las Vegas with those odds, we'd probably be okay.
Yeah, we'd win,
here's what's
win
cool.
a lot more than we lost.
What's really cool is when we then added and overlaid motivators with that.
Right.
And so we had behaviors and motivators, and all of a sudden we jumped into the 80s, something close to 84%.
In the 80s.
That we were able to predict, because now we had 2 different worldviews. We're angling this, and we're looking at different approaches. The triangulation started to give us a better picture of these people called entrepreneurs.
Now, for those of you in the audience that are not familiar with DISC and motivators, DISC is how people behave. It's everything you see. It's hardwired into your brain from birth. It's pretty much fixed. But the motivators, on the other hand, are accumulated experiences, beliefs, witnessing things, education, role models, culture, all kinds of things go into developing what you're either passionate about or what you're totally indifferent to, and in some cases you're just situational. And that particular report I use a lot in determining who's going to be a high performer in a particular type of job, because we can pretty much pinpoint a job and where people are passionate. They're going to be able to perform at a much higher level all day long versus just up till noon or 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and then they start losing their energy levels because they're running on battery packs. Now that's also a behavior function. If we have a mismatch, they also do the same thing.
You know, Voss, from your comment, it reminds me to point out to people that there is no right or wrong good or bad with any of this. It's all about who you are and finding a place in the world where this aligns and you can maximize your abilities in a work setting or even in a personal life, where we really are able to hit on all cylinders.
Yeah, the last thing I want to do is pigeonhole people into 4 or 16 buckets.
Right.
Because I have learned that everybody is unique, and I really truly believe that.
Yeah.
And when
we celebrate uniqueness.
Yes, when uniqueness is a great thing, and you need uniqueness, yet at the same time you need to be able to channel that uniqueness into job benchmarks, so that you know exactly what the job traits would need in order to be successful, no matter what the personality of the person is.
That's right.
And I see that a lot. Well, what kind of personality they have, and hey, personality is cool, but that's just one. That's a combination of stuff, and you get a mishmash of responses with that. I'd rather
to stay away from that word.
I'd rather have. Yes, I don't like that. And I also don't. Your comment about right or wrong. I always tell people, these reports, there is no right answers.
No.
It's just it's an assessment of where you are today and what are your natural strengths and weaknesses. Then my job is to relate it to how those strengths and weaknesses help or hinder your job performance.
Right.
And when I do that at a high level, then what happens? I've got clients that are extremely happy. I've got high energy employees. Or you have a high energy employee that knows what they need to do. Anyway, I've got there was another question I had relative to these assessments. Oh, it's this thing. I noticed have you seen our little guy here with a little, what looks like a baseball cap or a bike cap? Yeah. But it's got all these little electrodes in it. You want to explain what you do here? This is, by the way, this is really cool stuff. I'm
the
just,
data we were talking
I know
about,
what it does, but it's fun.
The cognitive neurology data that I'm collecting is all done with electroencephalograph, in other words, EEG. And out of our EEG, we use a neurocap, and the neurocap in this case is using 19 electrodes that are placed in a montage that is an acceptable setting. It's a 10-20 montage. In other words, those locations are agreed upon by the medical profession, and we all work with a 10-20 montage so that it's comparable data. But literally, every one of those electrodes then is collecting activity, neurological activity from the neurons in your head.
Wow.
And we're literally able to see what's been activated and unactivated in real time. It's turned into images. It's phenomenal.
I've seen some of the images in the color graphs, and you can tell if it's let's see, if it's blue, it's good. No.
Well, I'm actually looking.
Green. Which one is
I'm
hot?
actually looking at gamma, and I want to look at gamma activity, which is the highest and the fastest. And the reason I do that is
I was looking around to see. Oh, well, you got some up here on the board.
Back there. There's some there. That,
yeah.
And so what we're doing is looking at gamma activity, and the red actually shows the greatest activity at this case. So if you see there's some red in there.
Right.
And in the image that you're seeing, the red at the top of this graph probably should be on the left side. And what you're seeing there is acceptance. So somebody is seeing that soft skill exposed to them, and their brain is instantly deciding, yes, that's me, or no, it's not.
Mm-hmm.
And in this case, you're seeing those first 5 or 6 are certainly on the left hemisphere, and their acceptance.
Yeah.
They're saying, that's me. It's good to go. Now, you can't see the bottom, but I'll tell you what the bottom is. The bottom has no red. And the reason it has no red is they don't have that skill, and they've not had the experience, and therefore they don't even have an emotional load associated with it. They have no experience with it. So there's just nothing that's reactive.
I love the term that we originally heard. They might even be brain dead on that
there
particular
you go.
topic.
That particular topic, it's right up there. Yeah.
I love the extremes, so y'all bear with me. Ron, this has been a real pleasure. Is there anything else that you want to share with us as far as anything new coming down the pike? I know y'all do a ton of research also.
I would tell you that classic test theory is what the rest of the world is doing. And we have a PhD gentleman on our staff, Dr. Garrick, that is pushing envelopes in ways that really excite me. I would take credit, I'm a little bit arrogant, so I would take credit that the neurological is cutting edge, and we're doing things nobody else is doing neurologically to improve our assessments.
True.
You add to that now that we have a gentleman on our staff that is pushing the statistical analysis of our assessments in ways no one else has done. So it's not uncommon on a daily basis to have conversations about, let's see, we would be talking about item response theory models, and we would be talking about principal component analysis, and we would be talking about Thurstonian modeling.
Ooh.
And so these are things, you come into our side of the building and it's almost like you've entered into a foreign language.
Well, with my behavior style, I'm not sure I like numbers all that much, but however, I have learned that we have to track analytics big time in order to understand what performance level we are at.
Yeah.
And I certainly appreciate it. I have learned how to interpret the different reports. Particularly, my specialty is the Trimetrics HD, which actually has 4 standalone sciences, which allows for a total. And that's like 90-something percent predictability.
Yeah, we could go back to that. I took you from 64 to 84 or something like that. You throw in a third and we get over 90.
Wow. You hear that, folks?
So you can actually, now that's a unique audience, and it's only one study. But what it tells us is that gathering more data on people does give us a clearer image, and you would expect that. I would actually throw something else that you usually don't talk about a lot in that particular study. Entrepreneurs are a unique group of people. Serial entrepreneurs are even more unique.
More unique, yeah.
They have one quality that stands out that I would point out. And I'm not suggesting everybody do this because I'm not convinced that we want the world to look like this way. But
we don't want a bunch of robots, right?
Serial entrepreneurs are not team players.
No.
And so when being really low on teaming is actually an indicator that you might be tending toward serial entrepreneur. Yeah, I don't know if we want everybody to be that way. In other words, again, it's the match and making sure that everybody, uses their skills to the maximum.
Right, right.
So thank you for this
well,
opportunity.
This has been a great pleasure. I'm honored to have a few minutes of your time today and chatting. I'm going to, as you'll see this video up on YouTube and LinkedIn and probably Facebook and on my business page, InnerActive Consulting Group Inc. And please share this information with others so they can see what TTI SI is doing with the research and the analytics and really studying to make the reports much more accurate for you, the client. And it's a real privilege and honor to visit with you today. And I got to get back to the conference and listen to some of these world-class speakers.
And just remember that target training is actually a moving target.
Yeah.
And we're moving.
All right. Well, be sure to put a comment in if you want me to talk about other topics. As I've shared in the past, I've been accused of being the walking, talking encyclopedia of business, and sometimes it's harder for me to single down on a topic than to just answer or respond to somebody's question, or you just say, look, I'm very interested in learning more about growing my company or leadership development or assessments or whatever it is. If you put it in there, growing sales, B2B sales, even manufacturing, productivity, project management, all these things, I can share information that I'm familiar with and have used, and also have seen my clients use with great success. So with that being said, I bid you farewell for the day. And again, I thank my guest, Ron Bonnstetter, Senior VP with TTI SI in Scottsdale, Arizona. So thank you again.
Thank you.
You take care.
Bye-bye.
And watch for the next video.